You're eating now instead of the. They left all the black. So we have the bacon. So there's the low.
So who eats in advance?
A few?
Yeah.
Every time.
Thank you, Doctor.
I would gladly trade us.
That's they're gonna eat yours.
Looks like
Yeah. Through you.
I never tried that.
Stopping.
So pretty much like.
I'll go first after.
I said I'm coming for exams.
Fair.
I thought we were presenting today, that's what I heard. And it'd be nice to see the review. Originally like till the end of February, and then y'all would be gone, so it lined up perfectly.
Half-pound turkey.
Oh, dude.
Wow.
That would be no
so
seriously.
stressing.
I'm dead serious. Well, yeah, having better, but it's way worse than
We're getting our draft done, and then we're gonna.
You look quick.
Yeah.
That's why I make my own.
My wife had a tough pregnancy, so like.
I'm just at the point now.
It was really more Michael than all of us. What's the weirdest thing Michael?
You know how to.
Okay, y'all ready to get started? Okay, well, I'm gonna pass around that attendance sheet, get that started. So as I promised, we have a wonderful guest speaker with us today, Mr. Mike Sutterer, who has been the CEO of Bonnie Plants, but prior to his role, he served in a lot of different marketing positions and branding positions, mostly for Bonnie and for Miracle-Gro, right? Scott's Miracle-Gro. So with that said, I'm going to give him the floor, but as we go along, please feel free to ask him questions as he presents. And with that said, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome, thank you. How's everybody doing today?
Yeah.
I mean, you got donuts, like how, I thought y'all brought that in for me, but that's welcome house. That's all right. I shouldn't probably be eating donuts anyway. All right, I'm excited to be able to talk with you all today. So I'm gonna spend a little bit of our time on a couple different areas. One, give you a little bit of insight on who I am and sort of my career journey, how I got to be standing in this room with you all today. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of Bonnie Plants. Hopefully one or two people has heard of who Bonnie Plants is. And then talk a little bit about sort of our business and how we go to market and some of the things that are relevant from a marketing perspective, just to try to tie it into hopefully what y'all are learning here. And then we'll wrap up today with a day in the life of the CEO of Bonnie Plants. So I'll give you a little bit of an insight as to what life's like as a CEO, in case there's any aspiring CEO. Anybody want to be a CEO someday? Okay, cool. We all have lives. That's a good thing. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to start kind of at a broad level, just a little bit of my story. I am, I guess, about 300-400 miles north of where I spent all of my academic career in Gainesville. So I'm working on being a triple gator, actually. However, that doesn't mean that I don't have a serious love for Auburn University. Well, I never went to school here. I'm a lifetime member of the Alumni Association, a lot of support on campus here in a lot of different ways. But I did get, or am in the process of getting my third degree from the University of Florida. So I got a BA initially in economics. Any economics undergrad majors here? One? Okay, you can plug your ears because I'm probably going to bash a little bit on economics majors just because I am one. And maybe you can relate to some of the things that I'll say. But I'll get into that in a second as well. Then I went back and got my MBA. So I was sitting in a classroom much like this. at the University of Florida as well. And I'll talk a little bit about sort of why I did that and what I got out of that. And then fast forward a whole bunch of years into the future, and a couple years ago I decided I wanted to get my doctorate degree as well. So I went back and started that as CEO, which was interesting from a time commitment standpoint. But the reason I did that was a couple reasons. One, I have a lot of passion for teaching, coaching, mentoring. I really have passion for academia. I think education and access are sort of the two foundational things to solving just about every problem this country has. So I have a lot of passion for that, so I wanted to teach and get a terminal degree to do that, and just knowledge because I have a natural curiosity and like to learn new things. And I guess I'm a little bit of a glutton for punishment. I went back to get my doctorate as well. As Dora mentioned, I spent most of my career in marketing. We'll get into a little bit of that, especially early on, and then CEO of Bonnie Plants for the last 6 years until December. I actually left Bonnie at the end of December to pursue this, essentially, to pursue kind of new interests and hopefully life in academia. So that's kind of a little bit of my arc. I'll give you a little bit of the sort of career journey of how I sort of made it from a BA in economics to CEO of Bonnie Plants. You'll see a lot of diversity of companies, a lot of diversity of roles, and a lot of diversity of geography up here. And I think that's one thing I guess I would leave with you all in terms of your career. How many of you know when you came back, get your MBA, you know exactly what your career path is going to be leaving here? I have one person who's almost afraid, and then one person. That's good. I would say most people are probably in the boat of, yeah, I kind of have some idea of where I want to go, but not totally mapped out. That's a good thing, because I would submit to you, you're going to get a lot of opportunities presented to you that on the surface you might think, oh, this doesn't really fit with my A, B, C, D career trajectory that I want to have. But there's a lot of richness and a lot of learning that you're going to get out of some of those opportunities that seem on the surface like they're maybe incongruous with what you thought. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that as we go through here. But just real quick, I started my path. I got a BA in economics. The reason I chose economics as an undergrad degree is not because I wanted to be a politician or a lawyer. The reason I chose it is I knew I wanted a business degree, but I also really wanted to understand people. I have a natural curiosity on why people do the things they do. So I wanted to take courses in sociology and psychology, and I wanted to get a liberal education. The only business-related degree at the University of Florida that was taught outside of the business school was economics. If you were in the College of Business, you had a very narrow range of electives that you could take outside of the College of Business. So, boom, I became an economics major. That's about as far as I thought. What I didn't realize is if you weren't going to law school, or you weren't going to be some sort of a, think tank econ sort of global, analyst, what it qualifies you for is being a retail manager at Champ Sports. That's the job I could get when I left the University of Florida. Super glad I got it though. Retail, especially if you're getting anything to do with sales or selling products, working in a retail environment is the pointy end of the spear. That's where people actually whip out their wallets and make the purchase decision, so you learn a lot. I did too at Champs. However, doing that for about a year or a year and a half, I quickly realized I had I wore a name tag that was, one of those that you peel off. It was like a temporary name tag when you're done with it. And I kind of realized, I'm not sure I want my vocation for the rest of my life to revolve around a name tag that's disposable or having to fill in on Friday night when the people who are supposed to be working decide that the party that they want to go to is more important than showing up. So I went back and got my MBA. MBA is at the University of Florida. You could pick a concentration. I loosely knew that I liked finance and had an interest in finance. How many finance people do we have here? Few? Okay. What's everybody else then? No finance, no marketing?
Finance.
Okay, finance, good. Finance, because, money, you gotta know, like, financial stuff to be in business. And marketing was the other area that I had interest in, just because of that desire, again, on why people make the decisions and do the things they do. So I took an internship actually at Harris, which is a huge government contractor down in Florida, in finance. That was the best decision I ever made, because I realized after 30 days of doing that internship that finance was not the vocation for me. I didn't super enjoy sitting in front of spreadsheets all day. Not that there's anything wrong with that. We need those people. I just realized that wasn't me. I'm glad I did it. It was a great foundation. I met a lot of great people and some friends that I still have today, 1,000 years later, from doing that job at Harris. So that brought me into marketing. And when I graduated with my MBA, I thought, okay, when you're a marketeer, what are some companies that come to mind who are really great marketing companies? If you guys, like, who do you think of when you think of advertising, when you think of marketing, big brands? What are some that come to mind?
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
State Farm.
State Farm. The Jake ads. Love them. Yeah. Nike. Yeah, great brands. Anybody else? Apple. Yeah. So those are, you got Coke, you got Nike, you got Apple, you got State Farm. Those are like the, North Star of companies you want to work for when you're in marketing, right? And so being an aspiring marketeer, I wanted to work for one of those top tier brands. So I went to work for NextEra Energy, a regulated utility, Florida Power and Light, the ultimate commodity, right? You can't taste it, you can't smell it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it. The only time really you think about power is what?
When you don't have it.
Yeah, when it doesn't work, right? What a great thing to be associated with as a marketer is your only interaction is negative. But at the time, because this was, 1,000 years ago, energy deregulation was just becoming a thing. And so the government had said, hey, look, before that, everybody had their lane. There was regulated monopolies basically throughout the country. But this was an opportunity to kind of build a brand and take a brand outside of the service area of NextEra. And I was working with people from Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble and Dr. Pepper and all these amazing brand companies, and really learning how to create a meaningful point of differentiation with kind of what's the ultimate commodity is electricity. If you think about it, that's kind of what a lot of marketing is trying to separate yourself from everybody else. Create something in the consumer's mind that's a little bit different than everybody else in that space, whether you're Coke or Nike or whatever, because there's a million sodas or things you could drink. There's a million sportswear companies. That's really what it's all about. So that was a great learning experience as well, and took me to Scotts Miracle-Gro, where I'll give you just one example of this sort of notion of taking a career risk that ultimately pays out. I had marketing roles at Scotts in just about every brand at Scotts. It's a big company. Has about $3 or $4 billion worth of sales, lots of different brands, lots of different divisions. I was sitting in a room just like this when the president of the company, with some of my peers at the time, president of the company walked in and he said, hey, we just got rid of our head of Latin America. I need somebody to go run Latin America. Who wants to do it? Honest to goodness, that's exactly what was said. So if you have this visual in your mind of how publicly traded companies operate and there's clear succession plans and it's very structured, it's not. He walked in and said, just made this change. I need one of you to do this. And the reaction of the room was very much like y'all's reaction. Silence, right? No one put up their hand. No one jumped up and said, let me do this. So I had 7th grade Spanish, right? I knew how to say taco, burrito, and I knew how to basically ask where the bathroom was. That was the extent of my Spanish. But I said, all right, sure, I'll do it. And he said, great. Get on a plane and fly down to Mexico City today. We're gonna go meet the team, right? So I had no idea, didn't understand the culture, didn't understand the business. didn't understand the language. I get on a plane, I fly down to Mexico City. I'm walking to a big room where 60 or 70 people on the team were gathered waiting to meet the new head of Latin America. I get ready to open the door to the room, and the person that's with me, my chaperone, says, "Oh, by the way," okay, when anybody says to you, "Oh, by the way," before what comes next, you know it's a really bad thing, right? This is not going to end well. "Oh, by the way, I'm not sure if they told you nobody speaks any English." I'm like, well, this is cool because I don't speak Spanish. This is going to be an extremely productive meeting, right? But we got through it, right? I went in, kind of made a joke about tacos and burritos and asking for the bathroom just like I did with you all, and it worked. It broke the ice. We were doing hand signals and kind of having a little fun. Turned out there were a couple people who were bilingual, who could start to interpret. But what that did was it taught me an important lesson, right? I had a lot of success and a lot of fun running Latin America. I learned a lot. But one of the things I learned in that moment was that leveled the playing field. And I made a connection with the team that I never would have made. I was a real person at that point because I was super vulnerable and was able to connect at a level that it was sort of, I was helpless. I couldn't really communicate. I needed someone else's help in that team. And it made it very accessible and started our relationship off on a really strong foot. The second thing I would say is, had I not put my hand up and said, I could have said, hey, I've got a really good career. I'm progressing the way I want. Things are going well. Why would I take a risk and go do something that is totally outside my comfort zone? I have no idea what I'm doing, right? I could have done that. I didn't. I took the risk and it worked. Like, it is something that, again, these are lessons learned as well as people and interactions that have been with me the rest of my career. So I had a lot of other opportunities as well. You can see Canada, Europe, as well as the Mexican business operation as well. So that's kind of a little bit about my path. I'm going to pause there before we get into Bonnie. Just any questions about that before we sort of dive into the business? Anybody want to be an economics major after that? Anybody want to go run Latin America after that? No. All right, so Bonnie Plants. Anybody know Bonnie? All right, what's Bonnie Plants? You can't answer this.
Almost worked there.
Yeah, I know, that's what I said. He's excluded.
Yeah, that's right.
What's Bonnie?
Y'all do mostly potted seedlings, right? Or
Yeah,
those plants that aren't quite fully grown up.
that's exactly what Bonnie Plants is. Yes, potted seedlings. So Bonnie Plants is live vegetable and herb plants that you plant in your home gardens. We're located right here. Our headquarters is in Opelika. We do business across the country. We'll kind of get into that here in just a second. Again, you're excluded from answering any of these questions because you have inside information. So instead of me standing up here and just sort of ripping through facts and figures about Bonnie, I put a little matrix together. And what I thought we'd do is get some volunteers to maybe ask about one of those 9 numbers up there, and we'll start with that and sort of go through who Bonnie Plants is.
One.
If an MBA class would have picked anything other than number 1 to begin with, I would have been super disappointed. So thank you for the number 1. Yes, makes a lot of sense. So the one is really represents 2 things on here. One is Bonnie is number 1 in the space. We're the largest and actually really only coast to coast nationwide vegetable and herb brand in the country. So that's one. The other one is there was a Bonnie. So Bonnie Plants actually was founded by someone named Bonnie, which most people don't know. So there was a Bonnie, and I'll get to a little bit sort of why that matters in a bit here. Somebody got another number that they want to.
400 million.
24 million, is that what you said?
400.
400 million, okay, we'll go to from the smallest to the biggest, I like it. 400 million, that is about the revenue on an annual basis of Bonnie Plants. So if you can see our plants, those little plants like this, that's a whole lot of little plants like that to sell every year to get to $400 million in revenue. One more, who's got one more that I want?
72.
72, yeah, so Center Square, I like it. Hollywood Square, is that a thing? Do people know what that is, that game show? Okay, all right, that's good. I didn't know how old, if that was still around or not. 72 is the number of facilities, greenhouse facilities that we have around the country where we grow our products. So we have farms spread out across the US. One of Bonnie's key points of difference is growing local and close to the customer. So when you see a lot of our marketing and media and advertising messages, and that's something that's important to people, right? When you hear or see grown locally or made locally, does that resonate with you? Yeah, right? People care about that. So that's one of the advantages that Bonnie has. All right, we'll rip through the other one. So 400, we have about 400 different varieties of plants. And so I know some people are operations and maybe risk management and those sorts of things. We'll talk about why that's a challenge here in a bit. 108, so Bonnie was founded in 1918. This year, 2026, will be our 108th plant season. That's a long time. We've been around 108 years. Not a lot of companies have been around over 100 years. Even some of the biggest today, in fact, all of the biggest today have not been around 100 years. So that's pretty incredible, I think, to have that kind of staying power, to be around that length of time. 4,000 is the number of associates we have. It takes a lot of people to grow plants. It's a pretty labor-intensive job. Most of those people work in our greenhouse facilities. Many of them are seasonal. We have about 1,000 or 1,200 people that work for us full-time year-round. The rest of them we hire in the spring when we sell most of our plants. All right, 20,000. That is the number of retail stores that you'll find Bonnie plants in. So every Home Depot, every Lowe's, every Walmart, every Kroger, every Tractor Supply in the country, pretty much anywhere where you can buy a plant, and even some places where you can't, you'll find Bonnie plants. 24 million. So one of the things I think people are surprised to find about Bonnie is we actually are really an operations and logistics company, kind of masquerading as a plant company because of our footprint. So 24 million is actually the number of miles that our fleet drives every year. That's a lot of miles. Just to put that into perspective, it's in the top 2% of all fleets in the country. So it's up there with Coca-Cola, it's up there with Frito-Lay, some of these really large direct-to-store, direct-to-retail companies. That's what we have as well. So a lot of logistics and a lot of operations complexity in our little plant business. And then the last one, 9,314. So those $400 million in revenue. It's 100 million plants that we sell every year. And I don't know about you, but numbers sometimes get, hard to grasp, especially when they're really big. And so I need help to break it down into something a little bit more easy to understand. So 9,314 is if you took every plant that Bonnie sold every year, which is about 100 million, and you started laying those plants, these little guys right here, the picture, you started laying them and walking and kind of laying them end to end, you would walk 9,314 miles to get to 100 million plants. That's from here, basically from the campus of Auburn University to Sydney, Australia. You can walk that far, setting down Bonnie plants in terms of the number of plants that we sell every year. So it's a lot of plants. It's a big operation. And with that, I'm going to get into a little bit of some of the complexities that we have, and hopefully get your help on how we might solve some of these complexities. So 72 farms across the U.S. Again, those farms are located in 43 states, so just about every state has a farm. We have 700 trucks that are driving those 24 million miles, so a lot of trucks to keep track of. We do a direct-to-store delivery and service, so these Bonnie trucks right here leave the farms, drive to the stores. That's how our plants get to the stores, right? We don't go through warehouses. We don't do a lot of direct-to-consumer. We go direct to the store from our plant. or from our greenhouses. I mentioned the retail stores. How many of you think you'd buy plants like in January? Think January is a big month for plants? Probably not, right? Why is that? It's cold. It's cold. In fact, it's February, it's cold here, right? Yeah, people don't buy plants when it's cold outside. So 80% of Bonnie sales are in a 3-month period of time. And weather is the biggest driver of demand. I have not yet figured out, and if one of you has an idea on how to do this, guaranteed minimum $1 million salary for you if you come up with this idea, how you can get people to buy plants when there's snow on the ground. We have not figured out how to do that in a meaningful way. If we can, that would be awesome. But right now, when it's snow outside, people don't want to buy basil, tomatoes, peppers, those sorts of things. So if you can come up with that idea, there's a job waiting for you with a lot of money at Bonnie Plants right now. You can skip the rest of your MBA. Well, no, you don't want to skip the marketing class, but the rest of it after the marketing class. And then we're sold on consignment. Does anybody know what that means? Might hear about it in the world of clothing sometime.
You take your product and you put it on retailer shelves and then you just pay them a fee, essentially.
Almost that. So you do take your product. So most consumer product companies, Coca-Cola, Nike, whatever, they sell their product to the retailer, let's say Walmart. Coke sells a case of Coca-Cola to Walmart. Walmart pays them for that case, and then it's up to Walmart basically to sell it and get their money, right? But Coke gets their money when they drop it off at Walmart. Consignment means essentially I'm letting you have that inventory for nothing. If and when you sell it, then you pay me, right? So it's the inventory sits in the store and I don't get paid for it until the customer sticks it in their shopping basket and leaves the store, right? That's what consignment means. So it's pretty low risk for the retailer because they don't have any money tied up in inventory. And then the last thing on here is the product has about a 10-day shelf life. So from the time it leaves the farm to the time it needs to either be in a shopping cart or it ends up in the dumpster, there's a 10-day shelf life. So looking at that, if you were running this business, what do you think one of the biggest challenges would be? All of this stuff right here together. Yeah.
Determining how much inventory to have at a given retailer at any given time.
Yeah, determining how much inventory and why would that be so important?
Because you don't want to like run out of inventory where you can't get sales, but then you also don't want to have your products go bad and you have to throw them out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? That's exact. Preston, is that your name? Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's out of stocks versus shrink, right? That forecasting is absolutely mission critical. If you're, again, I'll pick on Coke again. If you're Coca-Cola and you miss on your forecast, big deal, right? You just stick it in a warehouse. I mean, it's cost you money, but you're not throwing the product away, right? The demand's going to come. It might be a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, but you still have the Coca-Cola available. If we produce plants and people don't buy them, they get thrown away, right? You eat 100% of the cost. But there's always this tension of missed sales versus shrink and out of stocks. So it's a big challenge. What do you think is worth more to Bonnie? A 1% increase in sales or a 1% reduction in shrink in terms of profitability? What would you think would be worth more to the company? $400 million in revenue, so 1% is $4 million in revenue growth, give or take, or a 1% reduction in shrink. Yeah, the reduction in shrink, and it's not even close. Right, and the reduction, and the reason for that is the reduction in shrink is basically happens at the very end of the production process. You've put all your costs into that plant, right? The materials, you've grown it, you've paid somebody to bring it in the store, then you gotta pay them back, then you've basically paid to dispose of it as well. So it's totally fully loaded with costs. And then on a sales standpoint, you just get your margin, right? I mean, you're not getting the full benefit of that. If you sell a $5 plant, you don't put $5 of profit because you got all the costs that go into it and marketing and everything else that goes with it. So this, from a business standpoint as well as a marketing standpoint, is the biggest challenge we have. The reason we sell product on consignment actually is that's how Bonnie expanded. That's how we ended up getting the distribution we got. And now that we've got it, it's very difficult to unwind it. So that's kind of why we are sort of where we are from that standpoint. So a little bit about retail at Bonnie Plants. So I mentioned all of these national retailers that we do business with. And in general, we're the only vegetable and herb product that's in these stores. They don't typically, there's no other brands really. There might be some local growers that put tomato plants or pepper plants in there, but it's generally speaking just us. And that creates a little bit of healthy tension between us and the customers because we need them and they need us equally. One of the sort of interesting things about Bonnie is we're the number one basket building item at retail. So we'll take Home Depot, which is our biggest customer. So if you are a Home Depot buyer, right, you get measured on a number of different things. You get measured on the revenue of the products that you buy, you get margin, those sorts of things. But the other thing that Home Depot looks at and every retailer looks at is this notion of basket building. Any ideas what you think that might mean? Why that would be important to a retailer? So if you're a retailer, right, you can grow your sales a couple different ways. You can get more people to come in the store, right? More traffic, more people come in, they're going to spend more money. Or you can do what? Get the people that are already coming in your store to buy more, right? Basket building is all about measuring for every person that comes in your store, how much do they buy when they're there, right? And so as a retailer, Home Depot looks at all of the different brands that they have in their store. What else is that customer buying when they come to Home Depot with that product, right? So it's a different way of looking at things. So you might go to Home Depot and buy a Bonnie plant, which is $5. So who really cares? Home Depot is like a $100 billion company, whether they buy a $5 plant from us or not. But what if that $5 plant has $400 worth of other things that go with it? Soil, plant food, hoses, gloves, raised bed, garden materials, etc., that go with it. Then it becomes a much bigger deal, right? So Bonnie actually is the number one basket building item at Home Depot. That means that a shopping cart that has a Bonnie plant in it is worth more than any other item in the store. That puts us in a very interesting position. One, awesome, right? That's great. They need us, right? But two, what do you think that does if you're Home Depot? I need to get that Bonnie customer because I know there's $400 that goes with that customer. I don't want that person to go to Lowe's because they're going to take their $400 with them to Lowe's. What might you do? What might that mean for your marketing strategy if you were Home Depot? How valuable is that Bonnie customer to you? And what might you do as a result?
Advertise your Bonnie products that are offered there.
Yeah, and in what way? What might you do?
Show different options that are products that would go with it. Like, oh, you can get all of these at Walmart or whatever.
Yeah, you might do that. You might also say, I'm going to give away the Bonnie plant because who cares? right? I want that $400 worth of stuff that goes with the Bonnie plant, right? And that happens. Well, they don't give it away, but they mark it down a lot. And so you might say, well, man, that's great. Please give my product away because we don't take any markdowns when they do that. They eat the cost of that themselves. That could be a good thing, right? So that's generating a lot of traffic. It's generating more sales. Why might that be a bad thing? So if Home Depot took your product that should normally sell for $5 and they sold it for 25 cents, why might that be not good? Or what might be the downside? There's plenty of upside with that, right? You're selling a lot of it.
People associate your product with being inexpensive, so if you need to actually charge more for it, people won't be willing to pay for it.
Yeah, it devalues the brand, right? Because you think, I mean, generally speaking, people equate price with quality. And if you're used to seeing a Bonnie plant for 25 cents and you walk in the store and all of a sudden it's $5, you're gonna say, that's ridiculous. I'm not paying $5 for this. Anything else that might be a problem with it? What's Lowe's gonna do if Home Depot sells a Bonnie plant for 25 cents? They're gonna sell it for 24 cents, right? Or at least 25 cents. Then what happens, right? Whose problem do you think that eventually becomes? Yeah, it becomes our problem, right? Because now no one's making any money. And yeah, the basket is important, but now you've basically taken all of the value out of the category, which becomes a real challenge because the retailers come back and say, hey, wait a second. Like, it's okay if I do this on my terms, but now you're forcing me to be at 25 cents because the entire market's at 25 cents. So you've got to lower your price to me so I don't lose as much money on you. So there are things you can do about that, like having some differentiation in your product lines or having some differentiation in your marketing. So it's not, that's why sometimes you'll see a slightly different version of products in different retail channels. Just use the Coke example again. When you go to a convenience store like a Circle K or something like that, sometimes it's a little bit different configuration. The bottle size might be different. The pack size might be different. They're doing that as a way to differentiate in channels and avoid some of that price pressure that you might have. So that's the fun world of retail at Bonnie Plants. Now, just a little bit about our media plans as well and marketing at Bonnie. So there's three different sort of areas of marketing up here that I'm going to talk about, and they're kind of universal. I mean, this is really any brand you could substitute in here. It's not just Bonnie, but at Bonnie we have what's called upper funnel media, which if you think about a marketing spend, you can think about it in terms of a funnel. And that funnel is just basically the closer you get to the end of the funnel or the narrowest point of the funnel is the closest to the point of sale or the closest to the end consumer, is how to think about it. And so brand building, we have a brand. It's important for us to build the brand so people know who Bonnie is. But it's also important as you get closer to the point of sale, like we want people to buy our product. And they could buy packet seed, they could buy fresh produce, they could do any number of things. So you want to convert and get people to buy your products as well. So this past year, we created a new partnership with Martha Stewart. People know who Martha Stewart is. She's running around Milan this week with Snoop Dogg, I think, at the Olympics. So Martha, one of the principles I sort of have, the reason you'd partner with a celebrity like Martha as your brand is what? What do you think? Or any celebrity. Why do people partner with celebrities if they're brands? Any thoughts?
That celebrity may be relevant to a market that you're interested in acquiring.
Yeah, that's exactly right? You're trying to borrow their equity, right? They have equity with a certain consumer segment. People trust them. they follow them, they're invested in them, and you're trying to borrow some of that equity to help, your brand as well. I believe that for these to be really effective, and if you think about some of the most effective ones that you may know, or maybe it's easier to think about ones that aren't so effective, I think the most effective partnerships between a brand and a celebrity are where there's some authenticity, right? Martha Stewart uses Bonnie plants and has used Bonnie plants for years and years and years, right? And when you think about Martha, what do you think about, right? She's known for gardening. She's known for her home, those aesthetics at home, those sorts of things. So she's in the right category, but she was a user of our products before we were even paying her, for years and years before we were paying her. That to me is authenticity that's sort of important, because I think it comes through. I think consumers can tell. And if you think about some other, anybody got an example of one where it might not be authentic? Can you think of an example where you saw a celebrity and you're like, why are they promoting that? Because they're just getting paid, probably. It's why they're doing it. But Shaquille O'Neal, right, is a great one. How many different things does Shaq, he does mobile phones, he does pizza, he does cars, literally anybody that will write Shaq a check, he will take their money for. To me, that, I can't even think of any brands, not one brand that Shaq sort of affiliates himself with, because he's so diluted and it's not authentic. So to me, at least, one of the things I look for in any partnership that we would ever do throughout my career is that authenticity. And Martha, I think, is that for us, and she's been really effective for us through the first year of our partnership. As you move kind of down the funnel, you'll see some things there. We're talking about value, and that's situational, right? What's going on right now in the economy? Tariffs, inflation, prices, all that stuff, right? People are sort of hurting, more people are finding ways to save money and those sorts of things. Well, growing your own groceries is a good way to save money. So tapping into that relevancy of what's going on right now, that's important to our consumers. And then finally, at the pointiest end, if you're standing there trying to decide which tomato plant to buy, we want you to buy a Bonnie plant. So we're going to give you some information on why a Bonnie plant might be better than some other choice that you might have. So that's get a faster harvest. That's sort of how you see kind of left to right on there. Keep me honest here if I say something that's wrong, since you're the expert on Bonnie. Any questions on that? Marketing, thoughts, comments? Yep. All right. I mentioned Bonnie, our founder. One of the things that was important to Bonnie when she founded the company in 1918 was giving back. And one of the things I believe is it's really important to understand the founder's intent and to be able to connect with the founder's intent. Again, that speaks to authenticity. And I think brands are just better and companies are better with authenticity. So it was really important to her to be able to enhance the lives of people in the communities in which she lived and worked, and that principle sort of carries through to today. And this really isn't a huge push from a marketing standpoint, although we do talk about this. It more speaks, I think, to some of the authenticity. So we created a Bonnie Plants Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit a few years ago. There's several pillars that we have in the foundation, including support for Auburn University. But a couple that I wanted to talk about that sort of directly, I think, relate to things that make sense for Bonnie to be affiliated with. One is our third grade cabbage program. So every year, Bonnie gives free cabbage plants to third graders across the country. In addition, we developed in partnership with Auburn University's College of Education, curriculum for third grade teachers to use to teach their kids where plants come, where their food comes from, right? Because most kids actually think that vegetables come from a can or a factory, or they really don't know, right? So giving people an understanding, giving kids an understanding of where their food comes from and getting them out, get their hands dirty, is one of the key focus areas. And so far, we've had over 10 million third graders who've been able to participate in that program. The second area is food insecurity. It's another great connection, I think, with Bonnie, again, authenticity. We have partnered with a nonprofit called ampleharvest.org. Ampleharvest.org is, their sole mission is connecting home gardeners and surplus vegetables that they harvest with local food pantries in their area. Most people don't know they can do that. Anybody who grows vegetables always has extra vegetables, more zucchinis or cucumbers than you know what to do with. Instead of giving the 10th bag of zucchinis to your neighbors, you can donate that 10th bag to your local food pantry. And food pantries are basically dying for local fresh food. So it's a super efficient way to help solve food insecurity in this country. And it's been really impactful. And the goal of this is essentially just part of being a gardener. Hopefully when you all start getting out in your own homes and planting vegetables, part of what you'll do as somebody who plants vegetables and has a garden is take some of your produce and donate it to a local food pantry to help basically your friends and neighbors potentially who need food. So this is, like I said, again, I put it in here for a little bit of authenticity as well. We do a little marketing work behind this, but most of it's foundation focused and internal and not so much facing consumers. All right, the last thing, and then I'll open it up to any questions, is I wanted to give you a sense of, I guess, a day in the life of the CEO. And since none of you want to be CEOs, it's probably a good thing.
Online students might want to do that.
Okay. And I know there were a couple of questions from the online students that I will answer as well before we open it up to others. So one of the things that most people think about a CEO is you're the boss and you don't have anybody telling you what to do, right? Which, would that be so? It would be awesome, right? You shaking your head. The fact is, when you're the CEO, you have not one boss, but you have a whole bunch of bosses, right? Because you typically report to a board of directors. My board had 8 people on it, so I didn't just have one boss to negotiate. I had 8 bosses to negotiate. So you never really get away from that. Even if you own your own company, you're going to have stakeholders and banks and other people you got to deal with. So I think there's always somebody who's going to be out there that you have to report to. So being a CEO doesn't get you away from that. But here's just a few things from kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis. First and foremost is communication. Communication, I don't care what job you have. I don't care what job or what level you are in the organization. Communication, the most critical skill that you can develop. And why? Why do we need to be able to communicate?
If you don't, nothing will get done.
Yeah, because you need other people to get stuff done, right? And you need to be able to tell other people like what you're doing, or you need to be able to ask for help, or you need to be able to communicate an idea, right? All of that requires communication skills, right? And the further up in the organization you get, the more important this will become. Because the people who are further removed from the decisions that you make have no idea the context on why you're making those decisions. I'm sure it happens here at Auburn University. Well, maybe it doesn't. Dr. Roberts is very good, I'm sure, at communicating.
Well, it happens.
But I'm sure it happens at Auburn University because it happens everywhere, right? You have a decision that gets made up here, and people spend a lot of time up here debating and what are we going to do? Why are we going to do it? Here's the rationale, all of that, right? But if the communication doesn't make it down to the people who are actually responsible for executing it, the best plans in the world are going to fail because you don't communicate. And the thing that I think most people don't really understand, and this, I don't care whether you're working on a project team in an MBA program or you're out in your job post MBA, it's impossible to over communicate. People will say, oh, over communication, you cannot over communicate. You can't communicate too much. It's not possible to do that. Because you, as the person who sort of has the information, has the curse of knowledge, right? You know what you want to do. You know why you're doing it. But no one else in the room or no one else in the organization does. So you have to communicate it. And does everybody process information the same way? No, right? Does everybody read every email with the same diligence? No. Does everybody attend every meeting? No. So you've got to do it multiple times in multiple different ways. And as the CEO of the company, or really anybody in a leadership position, that's one of your most important jobs is communication, and to make sure that people understand. And it's a two-way street. You've got to listen as part of communication as well. Building on that communication, there's also a lot that gets done with external stakeholder alignment. So I mentioned the board of directors, but there's suppliers, there's customers. That same communication internally also needs to happen externally as well. So everyone aligned and understands what's going on with the company. Because again, if you're working with a supplier, I don't know if any of you are going to be supply chain people here. If you are, right, you're going to have people who want to, people who are supplying you containers to put your product in, or people who are providing you a service like logistics. They're going to be a better partner to you if they understand what's important to you and where you're headed, right? The only way they can do that is if you tell them, right? You gotta have a conversation, you gotta have a dialogue, so they're along with you and can help you achieve your objectives. If you never talk to anybody or never share that information, they're gonna have no idea. They're gonna throw darts and hope that they get it right. But they'll be a lot better partner if you're out there communicating. Vision, strategy, planning, of course, a lot of work on sort of what the future is going to look like. That's been a challenge the last few years because no one knows what the future is going to look like. Because every time we think we have it rock solid, another tariff comes down, or some other geopolitical event happens, or whatever. Some event happens that makes it more of a challenge to plan. So planning, to me, takes on a much different lens than it has historically. Like, we don't do we don't do 5-year plans anymore. Because if you turn around and look at 5 years backwards from today, nothing is the same, right? I mean, the world is a completely different place. So if you just spend a ton of time figuring out every little detail of a 5-year plan, right, you need to be more nimble. You need to have an idea of where you're headed, but you also have to have flexibility in the planning to be able to adjust to the stuff that happens, which is happening a lot more frequently now. Team development and recognition, I mentioned this is where I have a passion. Spend a lot of time here. We developed a Bonnie leadership program in conjunction with Auburn University, which is fabulous. We put a number of our people through that. Many of them have gotten promoted. Super rewarding to spend time with the team, coaching and developing them. And a big part of what I do is create the culture where those things are rewarded. So more of it happens across the organization as well. And then community involvement and my personal development. So I do a lot of work in the community, boards of directors, plugging in with partners, nonprofits, things of that nature, just because that's a personal passion of mine. I like to do it. I like to be able to have an impact beyond just showing up at work every day. And then my personal development, I think you can always learn and always improve every day. So I literally get up every day and try to think about how do I make a better difference today than I did yesterday. I also have coaches that I work with I pay for these people myself that I interact with on a weekly, monthly basis just to help me. I would say to you, one of the most important things is as you go through your career, you're going to get a lot of feedback. And there's two ways you can react to feedback. Number one, you can say, that person's a jerk. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't like me. I don't like them. They don't understand. I'm right, they're wrong, right? You can take a very defensive view. Or you can view feedback as a gift. And I'm here to tell you, feedback is a gift. If someone takes the time in your career or in your life to give you feedback, that's gold. You may not always agree with it 100%, but they are giving you something to work with. You need to be open enough to say, what is it that this person's really trying to tell me to help me be a better version of myself today than I was yesterday? If you take that view, I'm telling you, you're going to be a better version of yourself tomorrow than you are today. If you shut down and say, that person's a jerk, they don't understand me, they're wrong, I'm right, all of that, you're going to miss those gifts and that golden opportunity. Because eventually in your career, you get to the point where the only feedback you get is when you get fired. That's how you know you're doing a bad job, right? So take it while you can get it. Anytime you can seek it out, ask for it. It's going to help you be a better person. I'm telling you from experience. All right. So that's it. I know there was a couple questions. Y'all can hit me up on LinkedIn if you want to do a scan of the QR code. I'm happy to connect with any of you or answer any questions there too. I do know there were 2 online questions, and then I'll open it up to the room if y'all have any in here as well. I think one of the questions online was around e-commerce and the growth of e-commerce. And it's a great question. So the short answer is e-commerce is the fastest growing part of Bonnie Plants. It's still relatively small scale. Part of that is because I think people like to go pick out their actual plant and they like to sort of browse those sorts of things. But it's becoming more and more important. And we had the fortune of, we actually went live with our e-commerce platform where we had a storefront, bonnieplants.com, March 1st, 2020. We went live March 1st, 2020. Any ideas what was going on around that same time? Talk about serendipity. Like March 15th, the world shut down and no one could go to retail stores anymore. And we had just launched. So instead of playing catch up, we actually were ahead of the game and able to capture a lot of that volume where people, basically had to shop online. And since then, it's just continued to grow and continue to be an area of investment. And one of the things we've done is grow with our retail partners as well, as they've put a lot more emphasis on e-commerce. And they view it more than just pure click and ship e-commerce. That's a big part of it, right? You go online, you click on Amazon, they ship it to your house. But companies like Walmart have invested a lot in buy online, pick up in store. So just shopping online, even if it doesn't get shipped to your house, you might drive to Walmart and they load it in the back of your car, or they'll deliver it to your house as well. So that kind of is all part of a bigger e-commerce platform for us, and it's a huge growth engine and will continue to be a big growth engine for Bonnie. The other question I think was around risk mitigation, and I think we talked about that a fair amount in sort of the consignment shrink discussion that we had. I will say it is a very hard needle to thread. Because on the one hand, if it's April 15th in Boston, Massachusetts, it can either be 70 degrees and sunny and beautiful and everybody wants to buy plants, Or it can be like today is in Boston, Massachusetts, right? 2 feet of snow and a blizzard, and all your plants are gonna die if they're out at retail. There is no magic 8-ball on how to figure that out, right? So it really comes down to joint planning and communication. We plan with our retailers to set expectations to say, this is what you can expect. Here's the flexibility that we have in that. We can't create plants where they don't exist. And it's bad for them if we eat a bunch of plants and throw them away too, because eventually they're paying that cost as well, right? Our prices have to go up if we throw away too many plants. So there's a lot of work done on forecasting, a lot of work done on, we have 400 different SKUs, as I mentioned, but 20 of them are like 60% of the sales. And so we focus on those 20 and making sure that those are in stock. So yeah, I mean, we have 60 different varieties of tomatoes. If you came in and the tomato that you wanted wasn't there, you're probably still gonna buy another tomato, right? So there's things you can do to sort of, hone that in to mitigate the risk, so we're not fully exposed. And a lot of it has to do with data and analytics and probably some of the stuff that you got exposed to when you were there in your internship as well. I think that's what the question was. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Okay, so how do you manage to target similar segments of your customers with differentiated products across different retailers?
Yeah, so how do we sort of manage our segmentation for our customers across retailers? A couple different ways. It's easier to do that online. It's super easy to do it online, easier than it is in store. So you can have a virtual storefront that you can customize and curate for a different retailer. That's the best way to do it. But a lot of times we do it through marketing. So just like I mentioned, you need to communicate to your suppliers so they know what you're doing. We need to understand what Home Depot's priorities are because they are different than Lowe's. And so Home Depot may say, we're really focused on this segment of customer, right? And if we can find a way to uniquely tap into that customer segment through a marketing program with them, a promotion, some sort of display option, assortment option, et cetera, we can play to their specific segmentation in a way that's unique from Lowe's without completely having two different totally unique product lines. The other thing we do is we have premium offerings that are unique to each customer as well. So Home Depot will have some subset of Bonnie plants that only are available at Home Depot. A lot of times it's a different container or some sort of decorative aspect that we'll do with them, just to give them a little bit of differentiation as well. Again, based on what their customer demographic or customer segment is. And sometimes that differs by geography. Customer segments in Long Island, New York are different than Lee County, Alabama. So the products that you offer in Long Island, New York are going to be different than Lee County, Alabama. Yeah, great question. Yeah.
I was just curious, I mean, obviously it takes a long time to build an e-commerce platform
Yep.
and logistics, all that stuff. What happened to spark that in the first place? Was there a particular event that happened that y'all said, we got to do this now?
Well, COVID certainly helped, but we'd already built the infrastructure there. So I'm a firm believer in just kind of doing and learning and getting capability and having that be sort of how you grow instead of trying to wait till you have the right answer or the perfect answer or the perfect time. And so we did that, right? We got into it with enough sort of capability that it wasn't embarrassing to the brand, but we made a lot of mistakes and we learned from those mistakes on where we needed to go. Then it took an investment. I sort of had to say to our board of directors, hey, this is where I think this is going and why, right? And we need to spend this amount of money and can expect this amount of return to make that investment. And the biggest thing, quite frankly, there was forecasting and and delivery to essentially meet the needs of our customers. Amazon's our biggest, obviously they're the biggest online retailer and they're ours as well. And you have to hit 2-day delivery. Like the Amazon Prime thing is, if you're not Prime on Amazon, you might as well not have your products listed on Amazon because everybody buys Prime. So we had to get our logistics down to the point where we could ensure 2-day delivery 100% of the time, right? And that was great too. We really wanted to do that anyway because plants are perishable, and if they're sitting in a box for a bunch of days, it's not a good thing. But those investments were really important for us to then be able to say, okay, we got that. Now we can lean in more with marketing and scale it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm curious to know, has there been any point in time in your career with Bonnie Plants where a demand forecast has gone wrong or has misaligned with production, and how did you go about that?
Every time we make a forecast, it's wrong. By definition, every time you make a forecast in any business, it's wrong. So how do you deal with that is some of the things I said. First of all, you plan with your customers, right? And you say, look, we're going to hold hands on this forecast and we're going to work together on making this work. Here's the flexibility that we have if we're off. So one of the things that our customers will do with us is if I grow 1,000 plants for Home Depot, because they say they're going to sell 1,000 plants, and they sell 500, they'll spend some of their markdown dollars, like to lower the price or put a promotion together, et cetera, to help liquidate it. So, and then on the other side, if we miss, right, or something happens on our side where we miss for one reason or another, we'll do everything we can to make good on a customer commitment. So the fact that we have 72 facilities, essentially growing the same things in 72 different places, right? If my facility here is out of stock on something because I didn't quite plan perfectly, I could go to we have 2 facilities outside of Atlanta. I can go there, get some of what I need potentially, right? And transfer it here to help smooth some of that demand. But every time, like literally every time we make a forecast, it's wrong. And we spend a lot of time on plan adjustments, and you will too, and many of you probably have things called S&OP meetings, sales and operations meetings, happen to every company around the globe. You're constantly sort of readjusting your forecast and your plan based on new information. Because when we have to plan almost 1.5 years out, there's no way I can tell you how many plants at a Home Depot in Bedford, Maine are going to sell 1.5 years from now on this particular week. You just can't, right? You're going to be wrong. So you have to build in the flexibility in the process to be able to adjust to information as it comes in. And you need to be able to work, like I said, with the customers to make sure, in our case especially because it's consignment, it's really important that we're in it together. So, but yeah, all the time. I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah.
Well, initially when you asked how many of us wanted to be CEO, you saw me. Yeah, I think I have that ambition, and I wanted to know what are the critical skills you need as a person to succeed as a CEO in any company?
A lot of patience. A lot of patience. Communication, I think, just back to that point, is really important. And I would say, whatever functional area, what's your area of expertise or what's your focus? Tech? Yeah. Definitely you need to be an expert in tech. Right? But you also have to have intellectual curiosity to be able to understand broad-based what's going on in other functional areas, right? I did not grow up in supply chain, but I could pass as a functional supply chain person because I have to have an understanding of supply chain to be able to be the CEO, and technology and other things. And I think having a lot of intellectual curiosity helps with that. The communication skills are really important. And the other thing I would say is being a good person oftentimes the story doesn't get told enough, I don't think. Because look, you can be an a-hole and be successful in life. And the world is littered with CEOs who are a-holes who are successful. And sometimes it's because it's sort of a sexy story when you can talk about how rude people are and all of that. But who do you like to work with? I like to work with good people, right? I like to work with solid people. I like to work with honest people. I like to work with people who are grounded. I like to work with people who want to show up and have a good attitude every day. To me, I think for you to get selected as CEO, you're going to have a lot better chance to be a CEO. You're going to have a lot better chance to be selected for any promotion if you're a good citizen and a good person and you treat people well. People want to be around you and they want to work with you and they're going to want to give you more. Again, it's not a prerequisite and it's not something you're going to read in textbooks or anything like that, but the world according to Mike Sutterer, yeah, I think it helps a lot when you can be a good person. And it's something that's so easy because it's within all of our control, right? And treat everybody positively, right? And everybody fairly. It will pay dividends. I'm telling you. And just be your authentic self as you're interacting with people. You know, one of the greatest compliments I ever got was Bonnie's a pretty blue collar organization. And our sales reps who drive those trucks and deliver the plants to stores, I had done a meeting, we were kind of doing some things on diversity, et cetera, and we were having dinner that night, and I sat next to one of our delivery drivers, one of our sales reps, who'd been at Bonnie for 20 plus years. And at the end of the night, she turned to me and she said, you know, Mike, it's really been awesome like spending the day with you and getting to know you. You're almost a normal person. Honest to God, she said. And I turned to her and said, that's the greatest compliment anybody's ever given me in my entire life, right? And what she meant was, I was just authentic and somebody who was connecting with them and it was real and, you know, I genuinely cared about them. And I think to be effective, you know, as a leader, that's an important skill to have and one that I don't think enough people talk about. Yeah.
You had talked a little bit about some of your marketing activities, like your partnership with Martha. What metrics do you look at to sort of assess the effectiveness of your communications? And I'm also curious if you do any brand health studies or brand awareness studies that you could speak to.
Yes. So one of the challenges always when you're spending money on marketing is it working? So at Bonnie, we spend just under $10 million a year on sort of marketing and media as a whole. That's a lot of money, right? And you need to understand if it's working. The answer to the second question is, do we do brand health tracking? And basically what that is you're sort of asking consumers on a regular basis every year, every other year, or something like that. You want to know like what the perception of your brand is. Is it a brand they would buy? Would they recommend it to their friends? Is it a high quality brand? Those sorts of things. Yes, we do that. And that is one of the things we actually look for in our success metrics is, are we improving our awareness against our key demographics? Are we improving there's sort of a net promoter score sort of idea, which basically is, do more people recommend your brand versus say, don't buy this ever under any circumstances? We have metrics around that we want to push forward. And then the lower we get, I sort of mentioned the sort of funnel getting closer to the point of sale. The lower we get in that funnel, the closer those metrics become to sales. So you do a partnership with Martha Stewart, yeah, there's probably some ways you can sort of tie that to sales, but you're really doing that as brand building, so it's big sort of brand awareness, those sorts of things. If we get down to more of, we also do a lot of work with micro level influencers. So it might be somebody who has a following of 10,000 people or something like that. But for those people, you know, they're super dialed in, those 10,000 followers. We may put some tactics into our marketing that require people to go buy a product or be part of a promotion that we're gonna measure the return on, or if we do a promotion with Home Depot where we say, you know, buy these 2 plants and get some sort of an offer. Those are a little bit easier to tie to sales, which is an important metric that we use from an ROI standpoint as well. And we know basically a break-even point from an ROI. And what's great about doing these analysis real time is we can jettison the stuff that doesn't work, right? Do more of the stuff that does, or try new things. And we're always doing test and learns to try to understand different ways that we can do, you know, marketing to be a little bit more effective. But obviously sales is kind of the biggest thing, right? That's the pointy end of the spear. So if you're not driving sales, at least over some time horizon with your marketing activity, might take a few years. Eventually, people have to become aware of your brand before they can buy your brand, generally speaking, right? So you want to try to create awareness first, right? And then they need to have a preference for your brand, like, why would I buy your brand? Okay, I'm aware of it. Now you got to tell me why I would buy it, right? And then I actually have to go put my $5 bill down to buy it. So, you know, each step along the way, we're going to have metrics to measure it. I will say this, as with everything, it's art and science. I mean, marketing is a science, but there's also some degree of art to it. You can make a model say whatever you want that model to say, right? You can give me a given data set on a marketing spend and a marketing campaign. I could probably make a case for why that was a good spend. I mean, you probably could do this too, and probably make a case for why that was a bad spend. So there is a little bit of art into it as well. And what are you trying to accomplish? And is this in service of, you know, the broader strategic vision that you have for the organization? Because some things are harder to measure super precisely in the world of marketing than others. So did that?
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Thank you. Well, I think we better end because we're going to get kicked out here, but thank you very much, Mike. Okay, so if you have any other questions for him, he might be here for a few more minutes, but I will see you all on Wednesday where we will discuss the Reliance case and discuss other segmentation topics. Thank you.
Maybe a dead horse that I'm beating, but I thought I'd